what I was going to say is, and it might be we were drawing a parallel between the situation with women and slaves in Black America. Sometimes the cruelest thing you can do is just go, okay, fine, there's your freedom, with no transition, no preparation, no help. After generations of hideous torture and trauma and rape, and there you go, you're free then. That possibly would be the cruelest thing that we could do now, is just hand the reins over and go, there you go then. If that's what you want, take it. Because it would be, I don't think that's a sexist thing to say. If you flipped it instantly and just went, there you go then, if this is what you want, it would be like a judo maneuver. You know,
I agree with you fully.
Create chaos.
Indeed, immediately after the Civil War, many slaves chose to remain slaves. Mm-hmm. They came back to their masters and they struck what was called at the time sharecropping agreements, essentially rendering them slaves and vassals.
Yeah.
So they chose to go back to the previous. And we have today a movement of women back to tradition, sort of. Yeah. Like, we want to be slaves, please take us back, and so on.
I might be misquoting them, but I'm pretty sure in the red pill community they call them red pill women.
Yeah.
And they're advertising themselves as being
one segment,
traditional. I want that role. I want that submissive role.
Yes, there's a segment.
Right.
But these are women who, because the red pillars are a bit on the aggressive side and the kind of macho bullshit side. Mm-hmm. More intelligent men, shall we say, attract similarly intelligent women who are, you know, I just granted an interview to a woman. I will not say where and when, not to. Listen, highly intelligent woman, in a free profession, high income, comes from a rich family, amazingly intelligent and everything. But she says openly, I want to end up with a man for whom I can cook.
Right.
That's my dream, she said, to cook. I want to cook for him.
Right.
I was shocked.
Yeah. Yeah.
And she suddenly started, she reverted. She's making up, doll-like. Mm-hmm. She's kind of becoming traditional again.
Yeah.
So some slaves chose to remain slaves and went back. Just called it another name, sharecropping.
I mean, am I an idealist to think that there is a possibility where you can have a non-slave, non-master environment where there is still sexual polarity, where men can still be men and women can still be women, or is that too rooted in old ideas of gender roles?
No, it's not a problem. I don't think it'll be a big problem to embed, to recast or reframe diversity, not in terms of master-slave and so on, not in terms of patriarchy. I don't think it should be too big a problem.
Okay.
But because women have found because women are intoxicated by newfound domination, it might take a long while. And what I'm afraid, maybe I did not phrase myself properly, what I'm afraid is that this period might prove a deal breaker.
Yeah.
In other words, if it takes women, for example, 60 years to transition to the new model of diversity, where men are men, women are women, but they're equals and so on. But these 60 years might be a deal breaker for men.
Yeah.
It might constitute an utter and final break between the genders. And then genders would come together transactionally to create a child or something, or to collaborate on business or whatever. Sexuality will vanish. I mean, men will go to sex workers probably too.
Well, they're buying sex dolls. They're buying these robots, aren't they? Yeah.
Pornography, of course, is a major. I think pornography now is the main source of sexual gratification in some age groups, as far as I remember from studies. In other words, women have gone to third or fourth place. First place is pornography. So, among certain age groups.
Well, I described to you sexual experience I had with girls in their 20s where they were passive, mute, waiting for something to occur to them. And I hadn't thought of it. You said to me, what does that sound like? It sounds like pornography.
Yeah, they are pornography consumers. And among, I think, between 15 and 25, pornography is the only source of sex. And between 25 and 35 is the main source of sex. No, 35 to 45 is the main source of sex.
It's porn.
Sorry?
Between the age of 35 and 45, the main source of sex is porn.
The main source of sex.
Wow.
In other words, measured by the time men ejaculate, the main source of sex is pornography.
Wow.
So there are already substitutes. And these substitutes are pulling the genders apart. And the fact that women put out effortlessly, because they're men now. I mean, no on boundaries.
Yeah.
They put out as men used to.
Yeah.
It's a big problem because if sex becomes commodified and cheap, what's the incentive, for example, to build a family or to work hard or to... And we are beginning to see new phenomena of rich women, wealthy women, and professional women who keep a houseman, a kind of a pet, a man, who is a nobody, zero loser, and he lives at their expense and just fucks them.
Yeah.
So we're talking about sexual slaves.
Yeah.
There are bad things going on, bad trends going on, seriously bad. The critical question is, at some point, of course, we will come as a species with a new model, which will preserve enough of the differences and distinctions between the two genders to create sexual attraction, because that's the key, ultimately, fucking and children. I mean, the question I have is, if this takes too long, who will be there to implement this model?
Right.
Will it become the preserve of an enclave? Let's say brainy intellectuals, they will implement this model and only they will reproduce and replicate and so on. And the vast majority of the rest of the population will consume porn with a pint. Could be. Already it's happening. The next generation already is definitely not interested in sex and dating. That is beyond dispute. We have numerous studies by now. The next generation, defined as people between the ages of 15 and 24, are utterly not interested in sex or dating.
They used to come into my school, and they used to go into different schools and say, don't fuck each other, stop fucking each other, or if you're going to do it, put condoms on. They might have to go into the schools and say the opposite. Start fucking each other.
And you will not have any response. There's no interest. In Japan, there's no interest at all. In Japan, well over 90% of teenagers didn't fuck, and only said to fuck, don't want to date, don't want to meet the opposite sex, and so on. They prefer video games or economic gratification. In other words, they say, well, I don't want that because it will distract me from making money. So I think already the damage is beginning to be irreversible, because if a whole new generation, one or two, grow up sexlessly, I don't see how sex will ever be restored. Intergender communication, intergender attraction, how will any of this be restored? I don't know. Today I fly to various locations, I go through airports, there are gorgeous teenage girls to die for, sitting next to gorgeous teenage boys to die for, and they don't give a shit about each other.
Just on their phones.
They're on their phones. They don't even look left or right, or nothing. Nothing. I have seen men treat women like air and even refuse to pay for the food the woman consumes. It's utter breakdown in everything. And one of the solutions introduced in the West is transactional gender relationships, going Dutch. So everything is split down the middle, expenses and the way. I've come across a couple where she contributed 50% of the cost of the wedding. I've come across a couple where he buys her flowers, but she pays for half the bouquet. I'm kidding you not, in Netherlands. And they said this is the norm among the peers. It's unworkable. It's not going to work. It's a disaster in the making. Of course, this couple doesn't have children and don't fuck. Right. They don't have children, don't fuck. It's unworkable. It's not going to end well.
We discussed the other day at length over dinner, we were talking about transhumanism and the next phase for humanity. I mean, in the face of all this chaos and how unworkable hard reality is, maybe people will very, very willingly move into a virtual reality type of scenario.
I hope. As opposed to Elon Musk and the late Stephen Hawking and even Bill Gates from time to time, I don't regard artificial intelligence as a threat, but I regard it as the only salvation, actually. I think there had been an experiment going on for 10,000 years, conducted by carbon-based humans, us. I don't think it went too well. As far as materialistic goods and so on, yes, it went very well. We are creating more goods than ever. most of us are not hungry when we go to sleep. We conquered disease and so on, and we established largely peace. I mean, it took a while, but the word largely is at peace. There's a major war in Syria, but that's more or less it. So, as far as these things go, we did well. Regrettably, these things are utterly unimportant. What matters to us as individuals is lack of anxiety, happiness, the joy of life, joie de vivre, inner peace, tranquility, healthy goal orientation, self-realization, self-actualization, as Maslow called it. In these critical respects, intergender relation, in these critical respects, we utterly failed. We failed because we failed to match social developments with technological developments. We have a huge lag, and our society is still constructed largely as it had been in Babylonia. Someone from Sumeria, Babylonia, or ancient Egypt would not feel out of place in, let's say, South Russia or Albania. Would not feel out of place. He may have to ask a few questions about, where's the police station, but otherwise he won't feel out of place. It's the same structures, same units, same organizational principles, same institutions essentially, because ancient Egyptians had courts, police, really.
Doctors, armies, the army's over there, the doctors over there.
He wouldn't feel out of place.
Yeah.
That's bad news. That this ancient Egyptian would not feel out of place is extremely bad news. Because everything else changed beyond recognition. He would not recognize television or smartphones. He would be shocked. He would think it's magic, like Clark said.
Yeah.
And yet, everything else would be recognizable. So we did not adapt our society and our psychology to the world. Whenever there's such a mismatch between the behavior of a species, the behavior reflects the inner world, and the behavior reflects how the species organize themselves. So whenever there's a mismatch, whenever the environment changes dramatically but the species does not, the species goes extinct.
Right.
If you take Bengal tigers, or you change their environment, you cut off the trees, you burn the shrubs, you build condominiums and so on. Bengal tigers did not adapt to condominiums. They didn't sign the right contracts. So they all died. Our environment changed much faster than any environment of any extinct species on Earth. And yet we are not extinct yet. And I think we are not extinct yet because we are more adaptable. We luckily have, some of us have this. And, but I think we have reached what Ray Kurzweil called the singularity. But he says that the singularity, the culmination of human history and so on, is a positive thing. He says, there, it will be wonderful. He is utopian. I am utterly dystopian. I also think like him, that we have reached the culmination of all this. But I think we have reached the culmination towards annihilation. As opposed to him, I think we are on the way to annihilation.
Massive depopulation?
Annihilation doesn't have to be the vanishing of all the specimen of the species. Annihilation can also be the vanishing of societies, organized societies, the disintegration of organizations and institutions, the lack of food, the widespread famine. And I think we have reached that point. I'm not mentioning, of course, global warming, climate change, forget all this. We did not adapt ourselves at all to our changing environment. Not psychologically, not sociologically, not anthropologically. We did not dedicate equal time and attention to our families as to our smartphones, to our women as we did to television, we placed an emphasis, by the way, not new emphasis, 5,000 years old emphasis. We placed an emphasis on tools, not on our fellow beings, not on our interpersonal relation, not on our social organizational unit, not on our institutions. We neglected that side. And now the mismatch the chasm is so enormous, it's utterly unbridgeable. Utterly. There's nothing to be done. And we are reaching the point of singularity. I agree with him fully. But there we will be annihilated.
Right.
Our only hope is what you might call transhumanism. Our only hope is to integrate with machines, to move on to the next phase. And people are shocked by that. Wow, it's horrible. Why is it horrible? I told you over dinner, I don't understand. What's the advantage of being a carbon-based container? If I take my brain and put it in a silicon-based container or aluminum-based container, does it change me in any way, shape, or form? So some scholars say the body is a critical part of one's identity and one's psychology, and without the body, we are not fully human. Yes, I agree. I'm not talking about remaining human. Remaining human sucks. We failed. I'm talking about moving on to the next stage of humanity, which is, of course, not like the previous stage.
Yeah.
Just like the previous stage, we will again get annihilated.
Yeah.
I'm talking about such a transformation that will guarantee our survival.
So the species upgrades.
Yes, because listen, if you look at Neanderthals and then Cro-Magnons and then Sapiens and so on, we have always had this, what in biology it's called punctuated equilibrium. We've always had these jumps. Punctuated equilibrium theory, Stephen Gould and others, they said that evolution is not a smooth line, but we have like jumps. And I think it's time we jump. Either we jump off the cliff or we jump up the cliff. I mean, it's our choice, but we have to jump. We are being forced now to jump.
Yeah.
There's a gun to our head.
Yeah.
There's an evolutionary gun to our head. Our environment is depleted and finished. Our interpersonal relationships are finished. Our mental health illness is exploded. Physical illnesses are exploding. It's a mess. It's a bloody mess. There's a gun to our head. We must jump. Up or down. It's up to us. Of course, if we become metal-based or silicon-based or partly silicon-based, of course we'll not be the same. I don't want us to be the same. I hope we'll be very different, you know. And I gave you the example of someone who came back from Iraq, and I said, do you think he's human? He said, what are you talking about? I said, well, you know, he's 50% metal and 20% platinum. Do you still think he's human? And you thought about it for a minute, and you said, yeah, of course he's the same. If I go to Iraq, and I get blown, with my luck it will happen, I get blown up by a improvised, how do you call it?
Explosive device.
Explosive
IED.
device,
Yeah.
IED. I get blown up and I lose both my hands, both my legs, and huge part of my skull. So they put platinum here, they put artificial legs. And now I'm technically only 40% carbon based. Am I still some Vaknin or not? Of course
Absolutely.
I am. Of course I am. I don't see what's the problem to integrate artificial intelligence. I see it as an opportunity, amazing opportunity. I think we should be beside ourselves with joy that we have this exit strategy, you know. But then they say, yeah, but you will not be fully human. Of course not. I don't want to be fully human. And then they say, but, and then, of course it reminds me of Turing, Alan Turing. Everything reminds me of Alan Turing. Okay, it reminds me of Alan Turing. Turing said, the famous Turing test, if there's a machine who talks to you at length and you don't realize it's not human, it's human. He said, then it's human.
Yeah.
And of course, there is no way I can prove that you're human. My assumption is that you're not. But there is no way I can prove that you're human. It's just an assumption. It's what we call intersubjective agreement.
Yeah.
Because you look like me, talk like me, this, that, I assume that you. It's an assumption. There's no way I can prove it. Maybe if I break your skull, I'll find chips. We'll do it after the shooting. So, I don't see the problem if I do break your skull and find chips. I've had a wonderful experience with you. You have a great sense of humor. We talked. You empathized with me when I described some problems I'm going through. Everything was okay. You can write poetry. You make wonderful YouTubes. Who gives a shit if in your head there is carbon-based, brain or nanotubes? I think this terrible fear of transformation, it reminds me of Franz Kafka, Gregor Samsa, who woke up in the morning and he was a giant cockroach.
Right.
This terrible fear of transformation is Luddism, hatred of technology, fear of technology. but we have always extended ourselves with technology. From the moment we picked up a bone of a mastodon and it became an extension of our hand, we got integrated with technology. It's always been a part of us. Your smartphone is an extension of your brain. It's an extremely primitive extension. It's external. It's this absolute extension. Try to pass a day without your smartphone. You no longer can.
No.
It's an extension. So I think the next phase, I hope the next phase, would be seamless integration of human with artificial intelligence and computing devices. It is our only hope. And of course, if this happens, many of the dilemmas and the conundrums that we mentioned throughout these conversations will vanish because our survival will be guaranteed, our longevity probably will be prolonged considerably. Sex will not be that critical, if at all, because now it's critical. Without it, we cannot propagate.
Yeah.
Sex will not be that critical after that. I mean, we will get rid of a lot of the baggage and burden that comes with our biology. And also with a lot of the problems that our biology creates in our societies.
Yeah.
And I think it's a good resolution. I don't see any major problem with it.
So would you envisage a future where there are banks of matrix pods and we say, okay, we tried, now let us get into the pod willingly, no warfare, no...
I think, first of all, an experience of a life is indistinguishable from having a life. If you end up with memories of a life, you had a life. If it came from a computer, so your life came from a computer. What do you think the universe is? A giant computer. You live in a computer. I mean, so that's one thing. But I do think that everyone should have an option. Do you want to live a real life, not connected to the pod, or do you want the pod? I also don't see any problem if the pod allows you to preserve certain elements. For example, imagine that I connect myself to the pod, but I have creative rights, creative license. In other words, the pod just obeys my... now I want to have a family. Yes, sir. How would you like your wife, blonde or brunette? Brunette, of course, you idiot. And I get a brunette wife with 3 children. What is the problem with that? If I am the master of my own life, if I script it, if my creative and artistic capabilities are preserved in my interaction with a machine that realizes my dreams, wishes, and fantasies, what's the problem with it? What do you think are we doing now? I will get married with a brunette. What do I know about her? I know what she's telling me. Do I have access to her mind? Can I ascertain that she's not a robot? What? I mean, we are all solipsistic islands.
Absolutely.
We have no access to each other. It's a delusion. It's a lie, a deception that we are telling ourselves. We are all alone, completely. Completely alone. We build language bridges, and we don't realize that they're actually language barriers. We team up with other people, and then we live alone together. We are all alone, all the time. And the reason we are alone all the time is that, but in principle, we can never have access to another person's mind.
Yeah.
Never. We are, by definition, behind a firewall for life. And no one can enter. Nothing can enter. Not viruses and not Trojans, but also no legitimate software. Nothing can enter the firewall. We're inside the firewall. Now, if I'm inside the firewall, I wouldn't mind connecting to a machine and living any kind of life I choose, as long as I have a menu. I mean, as long as I control the developments.
Yeah.
I would mind very much if I plug into a machine and it feeds me what it wants.
Yeah.
And it tells me what is my life.
Then you lose agency and control.
I lose agency, I lose control, and so on. Yeah.
What do you think of the theory that it's statistically likely that we are currently living inside of a simulation already?
I just said that I think the distinction made between simulation and reality is based on ignorance and self-deception. Simulation is very real. It's very real. It takes place in a certain medium. This medium happens to be silicon chips. But within the silicon chips, it's very real. We have an existence, a very real existence, in another medium. It's called the universe. Philosophically, there's absolutely no difference between a simulation occurring within a silicon chip and a life occurring within the universe.
Right.
They are both processes. You're talking about something else. You're talking about self-awareness. You can say, but inside the simulation, you are not self-aware. You're not aware that it is a simulation. But there's no end to that. It's infinite regression.
Yeah.
If you are aware that it is a simulation, you will then ask yourself who made the simulation. And is this guy aware that it was, and so on. And this is why one of the reasons I think we invented God, to put an end to this question. Because
it's annoying.
yeah, I mean,
it's anxiety-inducing.
Where does it end? We can conceive of the universe as a computer.
Yeah.
If we use mathematics from computer science and so on, we come to a pretty good explanation and approximation of the universe. So the universe can be absolutely described as a computer. And then, if we describe the universe as a computer within this model, within this way of seeing the world, we are simulations. If this is the way we see the world. But it's like my theory. I told you yesterday.
Yeah.
If I look at it one way, it's space. If I look at
Yes.
so it's the same. If you look at the universe as a computer, you're simulation. If
Right.
you look at it as not computer, you're not simulation.
Okay.
If you look at the silicon chip from above, it's a simulation, what's happening there. But if you look at the simulation from inside the chip, it's not simulation. It's something that's happening in the chip. I mean, imagine that you are miniaturized and miniaturized and miniaturized, which would be a great thing for many people, and inserted inside the chip.
Yeah.
Inside the chip. And you are tiny, you are atom size. The simulation would look to you very real. It's happening inside the chip. It would look very real. In other words, you would not be able to tell the difference between reality and simulation because you are inside a frame of reference where the simulation is the only reality. It's the same with the universe. It's a frame of reference.
Yeah.
If you exit the universe, for example, and you go to the multiverse, which is a result that comes out of certain theories in physics. If you exit this universe and look at it from the point of view of multiverse, then our universe is not even in existence. It's a potential. So it's one of many possible. It's a potential. So potential sounds much more like software than hardware.
Yeah.
So if you exit to the multiverse, you're getting much closer to the simulation thing.
Yeah.
So the question is wrong.
Yeah.
In other words, it's meaningless to ask simulation reality. Simulation is reality, and reality is simulation.
Yeah.
They're the same thing.
That was one of the hardest philosophical questions I've come across in the last couple of years, and I think you demolished it inside of about 3 minutes.
And miniaturized you in the process.
And miniaturized me in the
How
process.
many people were grateful to God? I mean, suddenly beloved.
Exactly. You were hated, now beloved. This is the guy who
That's the
miniaturized
guy who
Richard Grannon.
miniaturized Grannon. Yay! I mean, confetti and parade.
So, parades. Sam, it was a pleasure talking to you. A real learning
Same here.
experience. Thank you
Absolutely,
very
same
much.
here.
Cheers.
Same here. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Pleasure. We should do it again. At your expense, of course.